you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sascha Fahrbach. A tense meeting between Presidents Trump and Zelensky recently in the White House amid renewed Russian demands have made Kiev anxious. Now, the Financial Times reports that Trump pressed Zelensky to accept a deal on Russia's terms, while Moscow continues to insist Ukraine withdraw completely from Donetsk and Luhansk. Now, Zelensky says there will be no retreat and supports freezing the front line where we are now, quote, to stop the fighting. Now, all this comes at mass No Kings protests have swept across the United States, calling for accountability and the rule of law. We're now joined by Marcin Bużański, director of the Center for Diplomacy and Negotiation at Civitas University, to analyze it all. Good to have you with us. Let's jump into these statements. And we've had Donald Trump say not so long ago, this is something Ukraine can win. Now he's flipped over to you'll be crushed and destroyed. What do we make of this turn of events, and what's behind it? What's next in your mind?
It seems to us that, again, we are seeing a situation where Donald Trump is repeating the words that are basically from the last person he's been talking with and who made the biggest impression of him recently on a certain area or a certain subject. We've seen this at the General Assembly at the UN, where a lot of European leaders plus Zelensky have pressed him hard on the situation on the front lines and also on the fact that Russia continues to bomb mercilessly the cities, the citizens of Ukraine. Trump's response was, we can deliver more support to Ukraine. Ukraine could win. And now we've seen Donald Trump's phone conversation with President Putin, which was about 2 hours long, just before the meeting with Zelensky now in the White House. And it seems that Putin has managed again to force his narrative to the front, and that Donald Trump has picked up those talking points and repeated them in this meeting. Allegedly, this is what's being reported. Again, coming back to territorial concessions as a potential negotiating deal that could end the war, in Trump's words. So this is a situation that we've seen before, and I can imagine that it might change again in the next couple of weeks. The problem with this is that the narrative that Putin has brought up front again to Donald Trump's attention is blocking some momentum that we've been seeing for Ukraine when it comes to potential shift in the US. And here I'm thinking, of course, about on one hand, the potential delivery of Tomahawk missiles that Ukraine is lobbying for very strongly, but also about new sanctions on Russia, widespread economic sanctions, which are on the table. They're prepared. Congress has drafted them. They're ready to go, and they have full actually support of Congress. They will be voted in. They're just waiting for Donald Trump's green light. It was approaching. Now it seems that it will be moved forward at least until the Budapest meeting that's been declared with Vladimir Putin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as you've said there, Marcin, we've heard this before. We're aware of the mercurial nature of Donald Trump as well, saying one thing, doing another within the span of just a few hours. But you mentioned some interesting points. You mentioned the territorial concessions. I want to get into that first. At this point as well, looking at that incredibly, let's say, dedicated line as well. This front line keeps moving. Zelensky wants to freeze it. He's also said that he's ruling out any kind of withdrawal from Donbass. So how do we this seems like a no-starter already. I mean, how do we align here what Russia wants, what Ukraine is prepared for? Where do we end up with even freezing that line, if that's even possible?
Of course, freezing this line is possible. This is one decision of Vladimir Putin to stop the fighting, and this is what is the most realistic thing, and why there's a broad push for it. Nobody seriously at this point considers that Ukraine can mount a counteroffensive and regain territory, considering where the front line is, considering the situation of the armed forces of Ukraine and of the Russian army. Look, Russia has managed managed in the last year, I think, to gain something like below 0.1% of territory. It's lost, around 300,000 soldiers. It's not clear on even many more casualties in terms of injured, coming up to the almost 1 million people. This is incredible. If you look at those numbers, Russia is losing badly this situation. So basically, the narrative is turned upside down, and the fact that further territorial concessions are discussed is a big win for Putin on the narrative side. Now, Ukraine cannot agree to this, not only for the very principle of giving territory it's currently its own sovereign territory, but it's also not under occupation of Russia. Also, in the Donbas, Ukraine has built extremely strong defense lines, which, if they would be conceded to, Russia would have an open road to go further into Ukraine, to go towards Dnieper, to go towards Kiev. So this is absolutely unacceptable for Ukraine, and they cannot agree to this. Putin knows this, of course. So this is why he's putting this on the table. Now, on the ceasefire line, if the ceasefire happens on the current line, a sort of armistice, to say, this could be, of course, something that both sides potentially could agree upon. But if it would come with further security guarantees for Ukraine, if it come with potential for foreign troops, Western troops, to monitor that kind of armistice line, then this is seen as a basically failure for Russia, and this is something that Putin will try to avoid.
Mm-hmm. And also, speaking of Budapest, I mean, President Zelensky has said that President Trump has that pressure. If he exerts that pressure on President Putin, even if he's not there himself, that could maybe tip the tables and finally get some sort of deal and peace. Do you think that Donald Trump will exert any kind of pressure in Budapest if that meeting does go ahead, or will this just be another photo op?
I doubt that very strongly. I think the meeting itself will be just another format of a photo op. Putin will, to quote, throw in a bone of some sorts. Maybe he'll, go closer to saying the ceasefire line, but we need a change of Ukraine to be completely neutral, or demilitarized or something like that, which will be, of course, completely unacceptable. But the narrative will be, that we've agreed, to stop the fighting on the lines. Potentially, but if. And of course, this will not happen. Although Trump will say we've made progress, at the same time, Putin will lay huge visions of great economic cooperation between the US and Russia, investments in energy, in rare minerals and infrastructure, building tunnels to Alaska. As we said, the show will be all laid down. And this is, again, a very known tactic of Russia, which still seems to work on Donald Trump. At the same time, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, we'll see an increase in the bombing of Ukrainian city, of Ukrainian infrastructure, and I think this is also part of the Russian complete hypocrisy here in its efforts. It's simply not negotiating in good faith. Its objectives are extremely clear. They've been proven very, very hard. So the key thing here, really, and almost every country in Europe is very clear about this, and the European allies of Ukraine, understand this, understand the risks here. So regardless of what Trump will be doing, they will keep supporting Ukraine. But of course, without U.S. support, that will be very, very, very difficult.
Right. Marcin, I want to get two more things I want to ask you. One briefly is, you mentioned already, this project, this boring project, or pardon the pun really, the idea of this tunnel between the United States and Russia proposed by someone from Putin's circle. This is something that the president is apparently thinking about. Just considering, I mean, it's going to be hugely expensive, Musk potentially involved. What do you make of it? How is this even feasible in terms of construction and also economic feasibility? Tell me about that briefly.
Well, I'm not an engineer, but it really smells to me and looks to me as basically a new stunt, a new idea to shift the focus of conversation into from where it should really lie. Again, a very well-known Russia tactic. Look, Donald Trump has said now that Russia, can destroy Ukraine, that it has that potential. So Putin convinced him that, by saying even, we're just doing a special operation. We haven't even escalated to a war. If it was a war, we'd obliterate Ukraine. This is the messaging that comes through. We're still a huge power. We have resources. We can build a tunnel with you. This is what he puts on the table. And, Donald Trump picks up things like that. Come on, these guys, they've been, they spent decades and decades, I'm thinking about Putin and his people, basically learning how to manipulate, learning how to influence. This is the KGB, foreign influence playbook that we're seeing implemented here, and it's working. On the flip side of this, Donald Trump is known, also to jump on a different vision and different view, and he might at a certain point, get frustrated if something doesn't come through, right, and get the right ears from Europeans, leaders from NATO, and maybe give the Tomahawks in a couple of months.
Speaking of on vision, and speaking of influence, and Donald Trump, also briefly, he cares about his image. Looking at these No Kings massive demonstrations across the United States, every 50 states, the second time this has happened, drawing crowds anywhere between 4 to 7 million Americans across the 50 states. What do you make of this? What kind of signal does that send? What are the implications of this massive gathering everywhere across the U.S.?
Well, it does show, of course, that there is discontent with his domestic policies, which are clearly extremely controversial in many areas when it comes to rule of law, when it comes to democracy. I think that this might go in many ways, frankly speaking, depending on the economic situation in the U.S. As long as it's on the current path and does pretty well, I don't think these protests will have an enormous influence. I think the bigger consideration and risks are twofold. First of all, it's on the side of the midterms and how this kind of potentially could impact Republican candidates in different states and different areas, and that's a question to be analyzed. The second one is the issue of any potential risks in the economy of some crisis, and we've heard signals, especially from the stock market. There's some signals on the tech market, although that's the one that there could be some kind of a shock on the markets, and
right.
That is
on shocking. At the same time, that will be something, of course, we'll be analyzing, looking at all this. It's something that Trump obviously is himself worried about a little bit. Look, we'll close it there. Thank you so much for all those insights, Marcin Bużański. Appreciate your time.
Pleasure.
And thank you for watching World Talks. But there's more coming up right here on TVP World, so don't go away.